Hi guys, I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about how I use Git, the version control system, and Xojo together to protect my code and keep my sanity. What's Git? Well, if you don't know what Git is, it is a version control system. I believe it was created by Linus Torvalds, the guy who created Linux, and it's probably the most popular version control system in the world. There are others. Mercurial and SVN come to mind, but Git has become incredibly popular and is, I think, probably the most popular in the world. Helped through no small part thanks to the website GitHub, github.com, which was purchased by Microsoft relatively recently. Why would you need to use a version control system? You might be thinking, hey, I just make little tiny apps on my own, and I'm not a big company. What benefit does it give me? Well, loads and loads. I mean, I'm an independent developer. I pretty much just work on my own, and it has saved my bacon so many times. In essence, with Git, you write your code, you build your app, and when you get to a point that you're happy with where you are, you make what's called a commit. So you commit the changes in your project to your Git repo, and you can leave a little note. We have to leave a little commit message saying what you've changed since the last commit. And then you go about carrying on coding. And every time you're happy with the state of where you are, you might make a commit. And this gives you like a timeline that you can look back on of what you've achieved in your app. And importantly, it lets you roll back to previous commits in case you make a mistake later on. And because you've been leaving messages whilst you've been committing things, you can find where you might have made a change. Also, there are many ways of interacting with Git, and I'm going to show you what I use, but there are nice user interfaces to show you exactly which parts of which files have changed since your last commit, which is really helpful. The other major advantage of using something like Git is the concept of branches. Now, you might have a main branch that you do all your development on, and then you think, hey, I want to add a new feature, but it's a little bit risky and it's going to involve me breaking a bit of the code before I get it working. You might be a bit spooked to start doing that on your main branch. So Git lets you create a new branch, make all the changes and commits you want, and when you're happy it's fixed, merge that branch into your main changes. And if you at any point you abandon a new feature you're trying to implement, you can just delete the branch and go back to where you began. So it's super, super convenient. Also, with Git, all the changes that you make are stored locally on your hard drive, and then you can push them up to a repository on, say, github.com, which I'm going to go over, so that they're available on any of your computers. So it's like another form of backup, which is really cool. So what do you need to get, or what do I use, I should say? There's many ways of doing this, but I'm just going to show you what I do. So firstly, I use a Mac, okay? All the tools I'm going to show you work on Windows as well. I use a Mac. Obviously, I use Xojo. Now, you can use version control with Xojo on their cheapest free license, the one which can only save in binary files, but you lose an awful lot of the benefits of Git if that's the only license that you have. Really, for it to be most effective, you need to be able to save your project in the Xojo project format, which is only available, I believe, if you have a desktop license, an iOS license, a web license, or a pro license, so not the light license. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I wholeheartedly recommend signing up for a free github.com account. You used to have to pay a small amount if you wanted to keep the source code private. So GitHub was always free to share a repo for open source projects that anyone could peruse your code and download it. And you had to pay if you wanted to keep it private. But when Microsoft bought GitHub, I think it was when Microsoft bought GitHub, basically they made it possible that you can, as an individual, have as many private repos as you like. So you don't even have to pay for it. And even when you did pay for it, it was only a couple of quid a month, so it was well worth it. So get yourself a github.com account, first of all. And the third thing you're going to need is that I use is GitHub's free desktop application called GitHub Desktop. Okay, I'll show you that. So if we go to GitHub Desktop, so the URL is desktop.github.com. It's free. It works on Windows and Mac OS, and this is the app I'm going to walk you through integrating with Xojo. It's really great. Download it, install it, and then enter your github.com account credentials. So that's the baseline I'm going to assume you're at. You have a GitHub account, you have GitHub Desktop installed and linked to your account. Okay, so go and do that now. Cool, we're back. Right. So let's create a simple repo in GitHub or on github.com, and then we'll create a Xojo project, make some changes and undo some changes, and I can show you how it works. So what I'm going to do first of all is the smoothest way to do this is to, when you're going to create a project to manage with source code, to manage with version control, is create the repo on GitHub first. So we'll go to github.com. Mine has a slightly different theme, perhaps I'm using the dark theme, yours is probably white. So I'm going to go to new repo, or up here in the top right there's a plus button, new repository. Give my repository a name, okay? I'm just going to call it test app. Okay, I can give it a description if I want, I don't have to. Here I can choose if it's public or private. So public, anyone is going to be able to see all of the source code you push, okay, and they'll be able to download it and clone it. And that's fine if you're doing an open source project, and check out my GitHub repositories that are open source. But if you don't want anyone to be able to see it unless you specifically give them permission to do so, check private. I'm just going to leave it public for now though. There's a few other little options down here. The one I tend to tick is add a README file. This just adds a essentially empty markdown file that is contains some text that when you visit the repos page on the website will be displayed as a sort of informative README page. So I'm going to click create repository, and what it's done is it's just created this readme.md markdown file with this contents. Okay. Now here's where the magic of using GitHub Desktop comes. If I click on the code button and open with GitHub Desktop, say, do you want to open it? Sure. And it will automatically clone it for me using the app. Now it asks me for where I want to save it. Now I save all of mine in a repos folder on my hard drive. Okay, so it's defaulted to that because I've used it in the past. So I'm just going to say clone. It clones it. And if I go to my Finder and I find my repos folder, I've got loads of repos in here, and we find test app, there we go. It's just got the README file. Okay, so it's now local on my computer. If I select test app in the navigator in GitHub, I get a pane on the left that shows me any changes that have happened since the last commit. Well, there's been no changes because I've just pulled it down. And then I have a history tab that shows me here's an initial commit. I added a README file and that's the contents. Obviously I didn't do that, it was done automatically for me. So now we've got the repo on our computer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Xojo, create a new desktop app. I'm going to call it test app. It doesn't have to have the same name, I just am choosing to give it the same name. Click OK. So we've got a blank project. So let's just add something really simple to the project, just to make an illustration of how this is going to work. So I'm going to just add a button, and that will suffice. Okay, we're going to add a button, and we're going to save this project for the first time. So just click Command S. Now, two things to take note of. The format often defaults to binary project. As I said at the beginning of the video, you want a Xojo project file format. Now what that will do is it will save all the classes and modules and windows as individual text files. So that makes it possible to inspect what's happened since the last commit. If you save it as a binary file, the GitHub Desktop has no way of showing you what's changed. So it's not as effective. So save it as a Xojo project, and obviously save it in the folder that has just been created. So I'm going to go to my repos folder, find the test app, okay, and I need to save it in here. Everything I save in here, I can push to GitHub. Now, convention has it that you should save your source code in a folder called src for source in the top of the directory, and I tend to do that. So I'm going to create a new folder, call it source, and I'm going to save the project in there. So click save. Okay, done. Just going to get rid of Xojo and go back to GitHub desktop. Now we can see some things have changed. So there are 7 new files have been created by Xojo since my last commit. Now, Xojo has these files called .xojo UI state. Now, as far as I can tell, they're used to store preferences like how big the IDE window is, its position on your screen and things like that. It's not imperative for you to keep that information. In actual fact, if you do your work on one computer and then pull the repo onto, say, a bigger screen or a smaller screen, it can mess things up. So I'm going to show you how to ignore certain files so that they never get pushed to your repo. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say I can either ignore this file alone or I can ignore all files with that file extension. And I'm going to do that. It then creates for me a file called .gitignore. Now in this file, it's added a statement that says essentially never commit any files that have this file extension, which is great. That's what I want, okay, because I'm not interested in these files. So now what I want to do is I need to write a message for this commit. I'm ready to commit. So I'm going to say added a button, okay. I'm going to click commit to main. Main is the name of the branch I'm currently working on. It's the branch that is created by default for all projects. So commit to main. Now it's committed in my repo, but only locally. It's not on GitHub. If I go back to Safari and I go back to my repo in the browser, you can see all I have in it is the README. If we go back to the app, I can click on push origin or Command P. It will then push those changes to GitHub. If I go back to GitHub and refresh the browser, you'll see those files are now on GitHub too. Okay, great. Let's say I'm going to make a change. So I'm going to go back to Xojo. We've got this super simple app that just has a button. I'm going to delete the button and I'm going to, I don't know, add a text field instead. Okay, this is a fairly pointless app, but there we go. I'm going to save that, save the changes, go back to GitHub desktop, and now one file has changed, the window file. And GitHub desktop is showing me in red the lines that have been deleted and the lines in green that have been added. Okay, this is what Xojo's IDE has done for me to reflect those changes of getting rid of the button and adding a text field. So I'm going to commit this. I'm going to say swapped button for text field. I'm going to commit that to main. I'm going to push it. So that's done. If I go back to github.com, refresh the browser, you can see the commit message has appeared in the source file, the source folder, and that's it. So those changes are committed. What if I think, oh shucks, I wish I hadn't deleted that button now, I need it back. Obviously there's a stupid minor change, I can undo it myself, but if that had represented a huge amount of work, I might be in trouble. Well, Git to the rescue. All I need to do is, and this is maybe not imperative, but I do it, is I just close the project in Xojo. Because when I want to revert a change, I'm sometimes worried that things might get busted if I leave the project open, and that might just be me, but I always do that. So I've just closed the project down. I go back to GitHub desktop app. I go to my history and I say, okay, I want to undo this. Okay, I swap the button for the text field. I don't want that. I want to go back to what I had before. So I right click and I say revert the changes in the commit. Okay, I want to undo them. So revert changes. Now what that does is it makes another commit telling Git how to undo the changes I just did. Okay. So what I will do now is I'm going to push that commit. Every time I make a commit or revert a commit, I want to push those changes remotely so that they're always there. So I'm going to push it. Okay. And now when we go to github.com, it will say revert swapped button for text field, telling me that I've undone it. We'll go back to Xojo and we'll open the project again. So I'm going to find it in my repos folder, test app, source, test app.project. There we go. The button's back. It's all undone. And that's as simple as Git can be. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. One other thing I think is worth exploring are branches. So as we talked about, let's say, I'm going to write some experimental code that really involves me doing, something a bit dodgy. I'm going to make a new branch. I'm going to fork I'm going to branch from what I'm doing to sort of an experimental branch. And that's really easy to do as well. Up here, it tells me the current branch I'm on, which is called main. I'm going to click the down button and say new branch. I'm going to give it a name, super awesome dev, create the branch. And what that does is everything at this point in my project is now being done on the new branch. And I can publish it if I want, so that will push it to github.com. I could just work on it on my own computer. I don't have to put it onto GitHub. It doesn't really matter. But let's make some breaking changes. Okay, so let's go back to Xojo. And let's say, I'm going to add all these things. Yeah, I'm going to add this. Yeah, this is some really complicated code I'm writing here. So let's say I make these changes. I'm going to save it. Okay, go back to GitHub, desktop. Okay, those windows have changed. Perhaps let's add a module. Add a module, and we're going to call it awesome module. Okay, save it. All the saves I make are piled up into one commit until I make the commit. We'll go back to GitHub desktop. All these files are changed, and we'll say first commit for the new branch. I'm going to commit. You can see it says commit to super awesome dev down here. The branch has changed. Commit that. I'm going to publish my branch, push it to GitHub. And now, when we go to github.com, it says here on the main branch, we've got these files, okay, showing us our reversion we had previously. But I can switch to the super awesome dev branch. And now it says first commit for the new branch. Okay, so they're completely separate. Now let's say, okay, I'm happy with those changes. I've made all these changes and I want to merge them into my main thing, okay? How do I do that? Really easy. We change the current branch back to the one we want to merge into, in this case, back into main. If I go to history, it shows me this is the history only for main. There's nothing about the super awesome nonsense in here. It doesn't know about that. And then what I do is I go to branch, merge into current branch. I want to merge something into the current branch. Which branch do I want to merge from? Super awesome dev. It tells me down here, this will merge one commit from super awesome dev into main. Yes, merge. I'm just going to close down this project as well so we don't make any changes. Push that. And now, when we go to GitHub, we can see that the main branch says first commit for the new branch. It's merged in all the changes. If we open up Xojo, the project, nothing's changed. Okay, it's the same. Okay, so we've just merged it in. Let's say we want to make some changes on a different branch, and then we don't want anything to do with them anymore. So let's make another branch. Okay, let's make a new branch. Call it rubbish branch. Okay, and let's just add. What should we do? Let's go to the library. Just add something very conspicuous, like a canvas. I'm going to delete all this stuff. I'm going to add a conspicuous canvas. Okay, this is I'm going to save it. So, first change I've made in this new branch. And I can make as many changes as I want, commit them, have hundreds of commits if I want. But what if I say, do you know what? I don't want this branch, it's not working out. What I'll do is I'm just going to close that window. I'm going to go to Rubbish Branch. I'm going to right click it, delete, delete. Done. Switch back to the main branch. Now, something I should have said, I had unsaved changes in that other branch that I've now deleted. So what I want to do is discard the changes. Okay, I want to discard those changes. Discard, and now we're back to the main branch that we had before. And if I go back to Xojo and open it up, the canvas is gone and we're back to where we were. So I'm hoping that that's been helpful for you. There's certainly a lot more you can do with Git, and there's a lot more I do with Git, but I think as a good starter for how most Xojo developers can interact with it, hopefully this will be sufficient. And I can't recommend it enough, quite frankly. There's no downsides to using Git, as far as I can see. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Speak to you later.